Hi, I'm Mike Donahue, and I want to thank you for taking a look at the Kickstarter page for my book, Between Patience, Prudence, and Hope. Patience, Prudence, and Hope are three islands at the center of Narragansett Bay, named by founder Roger Williams. I spent a great deal of time as a shell fisherman in and around these islands. And it was there I learned what freedom and independence mean. But it's the virtues, especially hope, that also define where we are in many ways in the state and nation. Last election, we were promised change and told to hope, only to find that it was just more of the same campaign rhetoric we get every 4 years. As an example, the right of due process, of habeas corpus, has in many ways been suspended in the United States. This fundamental right has been a cornerstone of Republican governance since medieval times, first appearing in England over 700 years ago. Although cases today are limited to persons retained due to the War on Terror, extended authority has been granted to the executive by way of House Resolution 1540, or the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. Of course, many of the purposes outlined in the bill were intended for defense and military expenditures, and as such would be difficult to vote down because reliance of districts depends on funding for local jobs. But it's the other purposes that are troublesome. And when Obama signed NDAA and made it law, he codified indefinite military detention without charge or trial for the first time in American history. If we look back at the previous administration and the passing of the Patriot Act, we see a startling trend, that our liberties are slowly being stripped away. Surely not all of us will agree on all the issues commonly talked about during each election cycle. From the healthcare situation, marriage laws, abortion rights, gun rights, tax fairness, each will have persons strongly in favor or opposed to the laws as they stand. And it seems it'll always be that way for some issues. We've got to agree that there's common ground that's being ignored. And I think most of it points to one thing, and that's the value of our money. As it is now, the budget, economy, jobs, healthcare, energy all relate fundamentally to the value of money, and as such, to monetary policy. Yet Congress, since 1913, has relinquished that central role to private hands, with minimal oversight in the Federal Reserve System. It used to be the United States issued its own notes, without the Fed. And there's no reason banks need to have a monopoly on convenience. If we look back in our history, we see numerous examples of how people have used their own money to trade without banks. The classic example being the wampum of the native Wampanoag and Narragansett Indians that Roger Williams encountered. Williams was exiled from the Bay Colony at a time when, if he hadn't been so outspoken, he could have easily taken up high office in the church. For Williams to speak out against the tight-knit colony and brave a life with the Native Americans meant great risk for his family and hardship beyond what was customary for one so close to nobility. But what Williams found was perhaps greater than any title bestowed by any king: liberty, freedom to live his life the way he chose. And at the time, this meant freedom of religion, and what Williams had instilled into the charter for Rhode Island. It's also fascinating to realize that Williams had studied directly under Sir Edward Coke, a famous jurist who helped write the charter for the Virginia Company, and later expand the writ of habeas corpus to help Puritans, questioning the Anglican Church at the time. So it's with this in mind that I look at the picture of Williams overlooking the old Industrial National and Hospital Trust banks that define the Providence skyline and ask, can we take the prudent path and gain freedom from banks and a sound monetary policy that's the only means towards real freedom as the founders intended? There are quite a few examples of people who have risked their political lives to try to get money back in the hands of the people where it belongs. It's definitely a story that needs to get out there. So that's really the goal of the book, to get the word out that we can indeed have control of our money again and avoid the booms and busts that have plagued and bankrupted this country over the past 100 years. So for the Kickstarter campaign, the money will go toward the indexing and editing costs associated with the book. And since it's possible to exceed the funding goal listed, any additional money will go toward enhancements and lowering the retail cost of the book. Thanks again for your consideration, and come back to the Kickstarter website for updates.